We actually have about 3 minutes, but we started the broadcast just as people come in on the webinar. So it'll be another couple minutes. Again, Courtney, I'm sorry, I'm kind of over there on you. It doesn't look like it's it's good news. It usually means people are happy. Usually. You gotta come to. If you want to address the board on it, anything, or oh yeah, yeah. Do you want to speak on it? Yeah, you know what? We could speak on it, and it's on the agenda here. Which one? So that might take care of that one. We'll see. We'll see. Rick, how are you? Speaking or not? Okay. Oh, okay. In October? Thank you. Oh. Okay. Is she the new? Yeah, yeah. Just, I'm gonna start in just a moment. Give people another minute. I have so many papers. It should be on. That's on. This thing on. Okay. I have 7:01. You folks are ready on that side? Mike, you're ready down there? Jim's gonna be a little bit late, so we'll get started. Good evening and welcome to the September 15th meeting of the Glenville Town Board. Please rise for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. This past Saturday, we marked the 20th anniversary of 9/11. A custom here to mark that anniversary, I have read a passage from President Bush's eloquent address at the National Cathedral that he delivered on September 14, 2001, as a way to honor the memory of those we lost on that fateful day. Please join me as I read a short excerpt from the President's speech, what will be then followed by a moment of silence to honor the victims, the first responders, our military, and this great nation. The President said in part, "In many of our prayers this week, there's a searching for honesty. At St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York on Tuesday, a woman said, 'I pray to God to give us a sign that he is still here.' Others have prayed the same, searching hospital to hospital, carrying pictures of those still missing. God's signs are not always the ones that we look for. We learn in tragedy that his purpose is not always our own. Yet the prayers of the private suffering, whether in our homes or in this great cathedral, are known, and they are heard, and they are understood. They are the prayers that help us last through the day, and the prayers that help us endure the night. They are the prayers of friends and strangers that give us strength for the journey, and they are the prayers that yield our will to a greater will than our own. This world he created is of moral design. Grief and tragedy and hatred are only for a time. Goodness, remembrance, and love have no end, and the Lord of life holds all who die and all who mourn." Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please call the roll.
Councilman Mendoza?
Here.
Councilman Jablonski?
Here.
Councilwoman Burkowski?
Here.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Here.
Councilman Martin will be late or?
Currently absent. Again, welcome all. We have a fairly light agenda. We do have a public hearing we have to start with, and then we'll move on to the budget forum, and then privilege of the floor, and our agenda's up here if you would like some. There are two add-on resolutions, three add-on resolutions. One is appointing Francis Murphy to the Board of Assessment Review. The second is authorizing the town of Glenville Town Board to be the lead agency in the review for the the Freeman's Bridge Road multi-path project. And then the third is a resolution appointing Travis St. Louis to the position of senior automotive mechanic. So those are the three add-ons. We'll take them on after item number 12 and then end with 13 as new business. So with that, we'll move on to town council reports. I'll start on my left with Councilman Galewski.
Just two things to report, Mr. Supervisor. Folks might have noticed some of the teal ribbons going up around town, specifically in the Village of Scotia and Outlaws, but also in other parts of town. September is Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month. The teal ribbon is kind of a sign of solidarity in regards to ovarian cancer and ovarian cancer awareness. Jeff and Candy Magi over in Outlaws on South Street are some of the folks that are coordinating some of the ribbon distribution. So if anyone's interested, you can kind of reach out to them. Also, I attended, along with many others that up on the board and in this room, attended the unveiling of the Legacy Park, the dedication of the Legacy Park and unveiling of the sign. On 9/11. It was a very nice ceremony, obviously somber considering what happened 20 years ago on 9/11, but also very nice because it's a park that's going to be dedicated to our veterans, and it's going to help veterans and serve veterans in our community. So I was very, under the circumstances, happy to attend that. Chris mentioned that 9/11 having come and gone, and I know we all were in different places on 9/11. I when it happened was in my first year, not to date myself, I was in my first year of college up at Skidmore, and I distinctly remember there was a vigil on the campus green, and kids at the time talking about different things that members of their family had experienced. There were a good number of Skidmore kids from the Manhattan area who had relatives that were either nearby or who worked in the World Trade Center. So it's something that I frankly can't believe 20 years has passed. It seems like yesterday to some degree, but I definitely think that we can't say never forget enough when it comes to that. And that's all, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Rosbowski.
Yes, just a couple of things, Mr. Supervisor. I had the honor of attending the 20th 9/11 ceremony at the Water's Edge Lighthouse. Pat Popolizio and his wife Karen and John Wells from Wells Nursery have put that event on for every year for the last 20 years. And if you haven't found the time to go, I would encourage you to do so. It's an extremely moving ceremony, especially being that it was the 20th anniversary. And for me, the day was a little bit more raw because it just seemed as though 20 years has been gone in a blink of an eye. So the fact that there were so many people there and remembering those that were lost made the day very special. And I think it was also very uplifting and appropriate to attend the legacy projects ribbon cutting as well. One thing that I took away from there was an active service member from the guard base spoke about the project, and he basically said that the members at the base, at the guard base, will be looking forward to the opening of that project. For those of you who don't know, the Legacy Project is an 11 county, covers an 11 county initiative to build a cafe and a museum and a counseling center for veterans and active service members who would like to come and find fellowship, and for those of us who would like to come and support them as well. And we kind of take the guard base for granted because it's been here for so long. It's just part of, you go to the market and you always see somebody in uniform or in their fatigues or something. And so it's kind of like, okay, yeah, we know they're there. The planes fly over. And, I always tell my daughter when she says, Mom, the planes, I say, they're the sound of freedom, Kirsten. But the service member that spoke to make my point, he said that the members that come in from out of state and come in from farther away to serve at the guard base often need a place to be that isn't the guard base, and that this project will give them hopefully what will be a home away from home, where they can find fellowship and find support and find a place where they can go and relax and have a bite to eat with their friends and see other veterans and kind of just find a place for their heart as well. And the fact that that's going to be in Glenville, that's so special to me. So it's very, very heartwarming way for me to end a day that was so sad for all of us 20 years ago. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Councilwoman Rosa.
I'll say thank you all for attending the event. Next, tomorrow morning, 8:15, Town 5 in next week, with a mass redistribution. So I'm looking to volunteer for somebody at the time. Get out there. Next, I will be on a meeting next Thursday with local food pantries and local partners with that we can talk about sharing time healthy, equitable food action plan. Try to get that up and running. The object is to try to get to a point where we don't have crisis. So we're ready for events as they come. As you all know, Oktoberfest is a week from Saturday in Mallard Park. I'm looking forward to that event. Dave Hamill's here tonight, so he might have something to say about it. Rotary Golf Tournament coming up October 13th. I'm pretty sure they still have some openings, so anybody's interested. And I want to put out my personal appreciation for the highway department. They did some work on a culvert at the end of a sewer drain or a catch basin at the end of Horseman Drive. They get us through the winter for sure. They have a big hole. Did a great job fixing that. Just an update on paving. The Montclair, Bel Air, Catalina, and Dawn areas are now finished, and they're moving on to Glen Oaks, hopefully tomorrow, depending on the rain out. That's it.
Thank you. Councilman Martin, welcome.
Sorry for being, had a work
That's all right.
engagement, but I got here as soon as I could.
Do you have anything to? report?
Just quickly, the planner position is open, and we have some resumes that I'm reviewing. I'm going to go over with Melissa tomorrow, but we have some good candidates, and looking forward to reviewing them and getting that position filled.
Absolutely. There's some promising ones, but.
You're right. Well, we'll see where it goes.
Thank you. So now we'll move on to the public hearing, which is to hear anyone interested in the proposed extension to Water District number 11 for a certain property on Botch Road. I'll open that public hearing. Public hearing is now open. Anyone wish to be heard on that matter? Public hearing regarding the extension of the Water District number 11 to that property. Going once, going twice. Somebody, Microsoft wants to do an update right now. We're
course they
gonna
do.
postpone that one.
You've got mail.
This happens every Wednesday. We're gonna have to. All right, going once, going twice, seeing none. That is now closed. We'll move on to the supervisor's budget form, which we are going to do, and I'm sorry for this side, the way this is.
Yeah, we'll go.
I apologize.
We'll go sit down.
We are, folks on the webinar will be able to follow along on the screen. And folks in here will be able to follow along. I'm going to stand up because I really don't like sitting when I address the audience on this. But this is, thank you. This is a form that we do each and every year. It's been something that I've done since I've been 12 years a supervisor because I believe, as I say every year, it's important for us to be transparent in our budget process and to go above and beyond and do what we can to make sure that all residents feel as though they're engaged in the process and have input. And here's the important part, have input from the beginning of the process, not at the back end of the process. It's easy to say, well, come and talk at the public hearing when everything's already done, but it's better to have people come in early on. As you can see, the theme of this one is obviously protecting the taxpayers. The taxpayers have took it really, on the chin, as we all have with COVID the past year. We know people are trying to seek as much relief that is possible, building our community, which we'll get into some of the investments we made and maybe some of the investments we're going to be making, and of course, investing in our people, our infrastructure, and our neighborhoods. So with that, some basics. We do this every year just to get everybody on the same page. The budget is a $19 million budget overall, but that includes different funds. We really, when we talk about the budget that affects most of the town, there's three main funds in that budget. And it's the A fund, B fund, and the highway fund. So that portion of the budget is about a $15 million budget, and it's funded through property tax or levy, 7.5 million. So you can see the majority of it is through the levy. And then we have our sales tax, 2.6 million, our mortgage tax, our state aid. Franchise fees are things like the Spectrum cable. They have to pay a franchise to be in the town, and that's what we collect from Spectrum. And then all the other stuff, grants and all the other things, $3.5 million comes into the budget. How that gets put out by departments, just so you get a sense of that. Highway, $4.9 million. That's our most expensive department. And that's true because in that figure is a lot of big equipment, a lot of heavy equipment, and very expensive equipment to purchase. It includes paving, includes a lot of infrastructure. So a lot of that is in the highway department. The police come in at 4.7 million, and then the whole rest of the town is 3.5 million. We pay 888,000 to the county to run the dispatch center. That's not part of the police budget. Our debt service is just under $500,000. That's something I'm going to talk about heavy tonight. And our parks is about $450,000 roughly. By category, just so you see how the expenses go by category, wages take up 5.5 million. Our operations are about 5 million. That's everything, to run everything, the lights, everything. Health insurance is 2 million, state retirement 1.2, all other benefits are 744, and then again, a debt service, as you can see. So you can see with quick math, the vast majority of our expenses are in wages and health, right? I mean, personnel. We've always said we're a personnel-driven enterprise, and we are. All personnel costs 9.4 million out of the 14.9 million. So that's heavy. That's a heavy personnel cost for a town. We are fiscally strong. I want to say that right off the bat. We have done a lot of things over the years to make sure that we're in a very strong fiscal position. And we really did four things. There's four principles that we adhered to over the past 12 years that kept us on course for that. The first and foremost, we protected our fund balance. It's not the funnest thing to talk about. It's not the easiest thing for people who are like, oh yeah, that's great. The fund balance is like your savings account. And I always liken it to the fact that if you pay your mortgage out of your savings account, one of these days, you're not going to be able to pay your mortgage because your savings is gone. And that's what the town had been doing 15 years ago or further back. And we're going to talk about what that was. So we made sure we changed that practice. That is opposite of most municipalities. Most municipalities have gone heavy into using their fund balance. And you're going to see some of the things that impacted those municipalities because of it. So we cut our dependency on that, using that town savings account by $860,000 or 65%. We cut the use of that by 65%. We also cut our debt. You know, we looked at our debt, and we're going to see a slide here, and we're going to talk about it in a minute. We were heavy in debt about 15 years ago or so. And we cut that debt in order to free up some operational money. We lowered our debt load from $23 million to $11 million. That's a huge reduction in 10 years. And you're going to see something on that as well, just as comparison. We had to cut our operational expense when we came in. And that's something we're going to talk about in this budget. But we lowered our FT employee count by 25%. That's significant. So we asked our employees to do more by doing that. But every time someone left, every time a position was open, we looked at it and we tried to figure out how it can be done differently. Every time a position is open. But now we're at a point where I think we're able to look at that and see what we can do. And here's a big one. We expanded our tax base. That's huge. Through economic development, through a successful economic development program, Councilor Martin was a big part of, Sid Ramatar was a big part of when he was back on the board a while ago. We've added new commercial base, which has boosted our revenues, and that has taken some of the burden off our property taxpayers. A lot of people say to me, you know, Rotterdam and Niskayuna have a much bigger budget, and they do, much bigger budget. But they have a much bigger commercial base too. And so a lot of that is on the commercial base. Niskayuna has GE and the R&D center. Rotterdam has huge commercial base. We used to have a mall. I don't know how that works right now, but as far as how that's taxed because the state's in there. But they have a bigger commercial tax base. So we knew coming in 12 years ago that we had to shift that burden more. And that economic development program we put into place helped us shift that. Now to put some of this inside, kind of stark, you know, picture here, this is how we cut our fund balance, $1.33 million. I inherited a budget that was using $1.3 million of our savings account to pay for operations, turn the lights on, pay our people. That's a recipe for disaster. We took a very methodic approach over the years to make sure we reduced the use of the fund balance. Now, something happened in 2020 called COVID, and it reversed our trend slightly. So we had to do a little bit more than we wanted to out of our fund balance. But that's what the fund balance is about. It's about when you run into a pandemic or a natural disaster or something that you need to dip into it and use it for, that's what it's for. It's my goal to get that back down to 2017 levels at some point. I don't know if we can do it in 2022, but I'm certainly going to begin to put the pressure on to reduce that back down further. If we can get to zero, that has been my goal. It's going to take a long time, but we're going to reverse that 2021 trend of having to allocate more fund balance than we like to. The debt was cut by 52% over 10 years, or $12 million. This goes through 2021. You're going to see a different slide that gives you a different number because that only goes through 2009. So I'm sorry, 2019. So you'll see something different. But we went from $23 million in debt to now $11 million. That's a huge reduction in debt. And that took fiscal discipline to make sure that we were making proper investments, that we were doing the right thing, even though there was a lot of pressure to do other things. but making sure that we use cash when we could. So you see it start to come together. You're protecting your fund balance, so now you have cash for things like capital needs, which it was always meant for. And you start to see how now this comes into focus, that we become so fiscally strong over the years. Now, the net change in debt, I just want to put this in perspective with some of our sister communities here. City of Schenectady, debt increased $56 million in the same time frame that ours went down. Niskayuna went up $37 million in 10 years. County of Schenectady, almost $14 million. The Village of Scotia, $1.2 million in new debt. Town of Rotterdam, we'll give them an even. They're at about $55,000. So we'll call that even. But we are the only town going the other way. And again, this is only through 2019 because this is what the state comptroller reported on the website. So we're using state comptroller money. This is our, their data. It's not our data. It's not Jason's data. This is state comptroller data. We have reduced our debt by that amount in 10 years. Now, to give you an idea what that means, City of Schenectady has $143 million of carrying in debt. Town of Niskayuna is carrying $47.5 million in debt. Schenectady, $71 million. Village of Scotia, $2.4 million. Quick math tells you they doubled their debt in 10 years. That's a recipe for disaster. Rotterdam stayed even pretty much, and we, as you see, went down quite a bit. So, you know, we're proud of this. I think Jason and all the folks that worked on this over the years, the board stayed dedicated to it. This is a strong indication of fiscal stability and fiscal strength. And so we're very proud of this. And then, of course, that other piece that I talked about, expanding the tax base. We had added $102 million in new value over the past, say, 10 years, 11 years. That's a growth of 5.1% in growth. So that tax base has come in. This is what I talked about, where we're able to now start to shift a good portion off of our residents onto a commercial base. So that's all coming together now as far as bringing us new revenues. We are now at $2.1 billion in taxable value. First time in our history that we've gone over that was back in 2013, which the graph doesn't really show it like, you know, represented in growth, but $2.1 billion, a lot of money. And it's a big difference between that and the 1.99, believe it or not. It just doesn't show it as well. So budget accomplishments. What does this mean to the taxpayer? What does this mean to all of you? Well, we were able to accomplish a few things. We're able to create a capital reserve account to deal with all of our capital investments. So you can see, used to be, we go out and bond something and we try to do something with that. That was back 15 years ago. And that gets you in that kind of perpetual cycle of borrowing too much money, having to pay the debt service, not having cash on hand. We were able to create capital reserves, and we use capital reserves for a lot of our capital investments now. So we're using cash instead of debt. That has saved the taxpayer millions over 10 years. We created a debt reserve account. So we kind of approached it from the two angles, the front and the back, where we're able to pay down our debt faster because we had the cash to use to put into debt reserve, be able to pay that down and take it off our operational budget line, take that debt service off our operational budget line. And we created a retirement reserve account to protect the taxpayers from retirements. We recognized we had an aging workforce. We recognized that one of the challenges forward was that we're going to have to do payouts. When folks leave, they get payouts from their approved sick time that they didn't use, or holiday, depending on the union, depending on the contract, they get a payout for whatever approved time they didn't use. And that could be a big shock to a budget. So we wanted to protect against that. We created the debt reserve account. So what does this mean? We're able to keep Glenville the lowest tax community in the entire county. That's huge, and that's something to be proud of. And we all need to celebrate that because that's not an easy thing. We have always, again, the only community in Schenectady County that has always stayed below the tax cap every single year. And we properly plan for our capital investments. And just to illustrate the tax rate, as you see the city of Schenectady and the village of Scotia, Town of Glenville is the lowest tax rate, and that comes off the state comptroller's website. That's not me, that's not Jason doing the numbers, that's the state comptroller doing the numbers. And the state comptroller says it, so it is true, despite anyone's contrary argument. We have the lowest taxes in the county. So one of the major things that I've always been focused on, I know others on the board have been focused on, is investing in our parks. We continue to make significant investments in our parks. We've invested over $1 million lately, and those investments have paid great dividends. We've put a lot of resources into Melwood Park. We've constructed a new pavilion featuring concession stands, bathrooms, and full utilities. We constructed a second entrance into the park. We purchased and installed a new adaptive playground. We just cut the ribbon on, and we're going to be doing another event at Oktoberfest. We'll be inviting the board and the county legislators to that. And that has been a huge hit. In Indian Meadows, we improved park roads by paving what used to be gravel. People hate gravel, we understand that, so we want to make sure we pave that. We invested in the playing fields, we resurfaced the tennis and basketball courts with help from the county, some county grants for that. In my tenure, we acquired and constructed Anderson Park. The dog park is housed at Anderson Park. And most recently, we just received, through a lot of work, 6 acres of land at Legacy Park to honor our veterans, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later as well. But as you can see, our parks are growing, and we're investing in our parks. This is where earlier this year, we were able to create something called Solar for Parks. Most of the capital improvements in our parks are done through what is called the subdivision rec fee. So every time a subdivision wants to come in and build, they have to pay $100 a lot into our park fund, and then we use that money to invest in our parks. Well, again, just like we saw retirements coming up and we want to protect the town against large payouts, we saw that it was slowing down. Building new homes was slowing down. We haven't built, most of our housing stock was built prior to 1990, and only about 10% or so was built after the 90s. So we were slowing down, we weren't getting the money in as much. And so we created Solar for Parks because we noticed that solar farms were coming in, and they have to pay a impact fee of per acre, which will bring about $500,000 in new park money into the town with what's just before the town board right now. So that's one way we're improving our parks and continuing to invest in them, while protecting the taxpayer, because if they're not going to continue building subdivisions, then that has to shift somewhere, and we're trying to protect the taxpayer against that. Investing in our community. Because of our long-range financial planning, we're able to do some things in the community that I'm very proud of. And one is the expansion of the senior center, which kind of got lost in the unfortunate timing of the pandemic. Right when we opened the much anticipated expansion to the senior center, and much needed, COVID hit, and they haven't really gotten back to it yet, which is unfortunate because it was a beautiful expansion. We were able to do that here on this board. Another great pride of mine is that we installed sidewalks. For 30 years, residents have been asking for sidewalks. We've heard it from Schenectady County for sure, but we heard it from Secondog Elementary School in Scotia Glenville. We heard it from Muscogee School District. We heard it from All We heard it from Burnt Hills. They wanted to connect the high school and the middle school along Lake Hill. And we finally sat down and said, everybody keeps asking for this. Let's put this together as one big grant ask. Let's see if we can put it together. And we were able, the town of Glenville was able to coordinate 3 school districts, 2 towns, 2 counties, and a hamlet to get this done. And it's in. The sidewalks are in at Secondog Elementary. The sidewalk is going to be going into the O'Rourke Middle School area on Lake Hill within the next week or 2. And the Glencliff, we're working with the county right now to complete that engineering study for All Avenue, and we'll be meeting with them shortly to get that moving. But this was a huge win for the town, a huge win for our kids, a huge win for the school districts. And we were in position to be able to match that grant because of what the decisions we made that I talked about. Also, installation of sidewalks and street lights throughout town center. There is no question And you could ask any small business owner what has driven the development in town center, and it's amenities. It's amenities like sidewalks, it's amenities like street lights, it's the amenities that have helped and want town center to be the place for people to be. Why Chipotle's here, that's why some other people are here, is because they want that for aesthetics, if not even for use. But it's something that we're gonna replicate on Freeman's Bridge Road. That's a huge priority of mine as we go into 2022 and 2023. We need to replicate what we did in town center, and that was a huge success. It's a known economic fact, development fact, that sidewalks help small businesses. People will walk from neighborhoods to go to a small business. Maybe not a Target as much, maybe it's too much to carry, but small businesses are helped by this, and that's critical. We've connected our parks, we've connected our commercial corridors, and we've connected our residential neighborhoods. We've also worked on the preservation and restoration of Yates Mansion, and that's another important project, particularly to the people of All Falls. We are completing the Glenville, Scotia portion of the Mohawk Hudson Pike Trail. This is an important piece to what we've been able to accomplish, is to finally get Freeman's Bridge Road connected to Shawnee. Now we have people that can go between the village of Scotia and the town of Glenville along the river on a pedestrian path. And of course, as I mentioned to you, is continue to work on Freeman's Bridge Road multi-use path. We're going to have some big news on that very shortly. We're excited for the beginning of that. And that's going to be something that goes from Freeman's Bridge Road up to Dutch Meadows. And that's where, when you get to Dutch Meadows, now we have a pedestrian path going down to 50 by the new apartments and across from the veterans, the new Veterans Park. So you can see there's starting to be connections made in the town, and that's critical. Sometimes it takes a while to build it, but as we build it, these connections start to come together, people use it. I'm in and out of this place every day on a number of occasions, and I can tell you almost every day, almost every occasion, someone's using the Glen Ridge Road sidewalk. That was huge. Woodhaven loves it, I know, because I hear it from them all the time, and there's always someone on it. In fact, just a cute story, I loved it. There were some kids riding from Woodhaven down, and they had their bike helmets on, 4 kids. And a police officer pulled out in front of me, and then I came out behind him, and he turned his lights on and he pulled over, and he stopped the kids, and he gave them some sort of like, I think, ice cream coupon for wearing a helmet. You know, it was great. And they were excited, and everyone was thrilled, and it was just a great community thing. So that was nice. We invested in our infrastructure as well. Our solid finances have allowed us to tackle some infrastructure projects. This is a big one. We've increased our paving by $150,000 every year for the past 2 years. We use a budget of more than $500,000. The town of Glenville has never put that much into paving, ever in its history. And there were some years when there was nothing in the paving budget. It was 15 years ago. Ironically, if it wasn't an election year, you probably weren't doing any paving. That's how it used to run. But now we're putting a significant amount of money into our paving budget, and we're catching up in the neighborhood. I know people are frustrated. I know people live on streets that aren't quite there yet, but we're doing all we can to catch up for past ills. Most of our paving budget comes from the state of New York. The state of New York has not increased our paving budget to any town, any community in the past 20 years. So as you know, if revenues stay here, and you know what costs have done in the past 20 years, there's that delta between what we get and how costs have gone. It means we have to pave fewer and fewer streets unless we put more money into it. And that's what we had to do, but we had to get our budget fixed first before we can make these investments, and that's what we did. We invested nearly $2 million over the last 5 years to replace heavy equipment in our highway department. That is a huge investment in our highway. Huge. That's a lot of equipment that we put in. Again, we inherited a budget, and Tom, if he was here, can tell you, Capola, where they didn't buy trucks. Things didn't get replaced. We inherited a lot of, I think you remember too, you've been here since the beginning. A lot of broken down. We went down there and your foot came out the bottom. It was terrible. We now have a commitment to replacing that. We replaced 6,000 old water meters with new radio lead units for greater accuracy and efficiency, and we're getting savings out of that now. And we're finally replacing the Dawson Bridge this year. That is, I wish Tom was here to talk about that. You don't have any information on that, do you, Travis? I know that they're meeting on it, the final plan, so that's coming. But we've also invested in our staff. And that's something I think it gets overlooked sometimes. But in recent years, we've actually started to add staff, as I talked about. So I talked about, you had to go through this cathartic experience, unfortunately, to get us to where we needed to be. But we talked about where we changed positions, but now we're starting to really invest in positions. So in highway, we added 3 folks there since 2017. So that went from 18 to 21. That's an increase. In our parks department, which we really don't have a parks department yet, but that's another story. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. We went from 2 to 3.5. So the parks department is really part of the highway. They share. And so between those 2 departments, highway has really gained, 3.5, 4.5 over the past 3 years or so. That's a big investment in that department. And we'll see if we're done. I'm not sure yet at this juncture. And even in the police department, we've added 2 people since 2017. So that is a huge investment. Now I want to take a minute because I get this all the time is where the property taxes go. So you think about your annual tax bill, everything you pay from January to December in taxes. Includes school, county, town, and highway is part of the town bill. But really the vast majority of your tax dollars go to your school district. 65% in this case, 22% go to the county. So the school, you pay in September, county and town, you pay in January, 22% goes to the county. And then just over 10% now, because the schools come down a little bit. They got money, federal money, and a lot of aid since COVID. So their costs have come down a little, or their grants have come in, so it shifted a little bit. But we're still around 10, 11 cents of your annual dollar on your total taxes. So, one of the major challenges is the tax cap. I get this question all the time. Tax cap is a huge problem, huge challenge for us. In 2022, we can have a 2% levy increase based on the maximum formula. And that's what you're allowed. But 0.47% is based on for tax growth. So our overall minimum levy can increase by $226,000 on a $19 million budget. Or in this case, talking about the tree funds and about a $15 million budget. But our increase is allowable increase, not to break the tax, is tax cap, $226,000. But some of our mandatory expenses already, contractual wage increases are $150,000, the benefit increases are $40,000, and health insurance is $80,000. So you can see the mandatory expense increase is a total of $270,000. As we wake up on January 1, we have to have those increases in our budget. They're mandated and they're mandatory. It's above the allowable cap. Now, we faced this before as well. And I want to talk about health insurance for just 1 minute because this is one of our big drivers. We talk about this every year. Our premium increases this year, as I said, are expected to be about $80,000, maybe $100,000. And that's actually low. That's actually low, but it's half the allowable cap. In 2022, town taxpayers will pay more than $2 million in health benefits for our town employees. That's staggering on a $15 million budget. So you can see where some of the concerns are. Health, retirement, payroll. I talked about retirement payouts a little bit, so I just want to go over that real quick. We expect potentially about 6 retirements in 2022. That means with the potential sick payout, we're talking about $230,000 on top of the $270,000 we just talked about, which was already over the cap. Now we're another $230,000 over the cap. Thank goodness for our retirement reserve account. That's what that was about. This is how I'm talking about how we protected our taxpayers against big ticket items that come in. In 2021, we paid out $268,000 in retirement employees, which is more than our maximum cap increase altogether in 2020. In the last 3 years, we paid out almost $600,000 in unused sick leave which represents 80% of our total tax cap increase for those 3 years. So these are some of the challenges that we face when we sit down and we try to put this budget together and try to figure out how we do this. Well, we're well over the cap on mandated and mandatory expenses. But it doesn't stop us from looking at our capital projects. It's important that we do that. We have received 4 grants worth $2.6 million, 4 grants worth $2.6 million. We have a match of those grants of $883,000 to get those grants. So that is coming out of capital reserve. I talked about how we set up capital reserve by protecting our fund balance. It all works together as components. These grants include the Mohawk Hudson Bike Trail I talked about, the Freeman Bridge Road multi-use path, that tri-school district sidewalk project, and a tree inventory plan, which is actually a small one, not a big one as far as costs go. But if we did not have that capital reserve, 2 things would have happened in this town. A, it might not have gotten done, or B, we would have had to borrow for it. We would have had increased debt. So because of the decisions we made over the past 12 years and stayed true to, we were able to make sure that these important community projects were able to get done with no impact to the taxpayer. That's the amazing thing. And so, you know, we have more we want to do. And so right now we have at least 8 major grants in for 2022. We won't know if we get these until December, but the grants are worth $3.2 million if we get them. Now, we're not going to get them all. We may not get any of them, but if we get 1 or 2, we might be lucky. They have a match of $1.6 million, so that's something to consider. Now, again, that's all 8 projects. All 8 projects are not going to happen. And they include a small business grant program that Jim Martin has been working on, the Van Buren sidewalk potentially to connect another neighborhood into our commercial corridor and into the parks, the Melwick pedestrian connection. It's imperative for us that we connect Melwick Park to Scotia and the town below the avenue, and we're finding ways to do that as we speak. The Yates Facade Grant, the Veterans Legacy Park Plan is another grant, the Mohawk boat launch, which would be in Melwick Park, Freeman's Bridge sidewalks to continue up to connect to Route 50, and then a park website, which again is one of the smaller grants. So every year we go over what our priorities are. First and foremost, no budget gimmicks. We get this all the time. Municipalities can find ways to either, you know, more fund balance or more debt or whatever. We're not doing that. We're playing this straight, and we're making sure that we're protecting the taxpayers with a solid foundation going forward. No hidden stealth taxes. Some other municipalities came up with new fees and new ways of collecting revenue that aren't called taxes. We're not doing that. No reduction of services. It's imperative to me that we do not reduce services. A reduction of services is another form of a tax hike. You're paying the same amount of money for less services. That's not a good deal for the taxpayer. We're going to continue to maintain our services. No short-term pain for gain for long-term pain. This is what I talk about in the fund balance. You can allocate more fund balance, and you're going to have a good year, but that's going to catch up to you long-term. And that's not something that I'm ever going to do. And so we will not, as far as my budget being submitted, will not have any short-term gain for long-term pain. No overuse of our savings to fund the reserves, which I just talked about. We're going to stick to our adopted fund balance policy. We have a policy in place for a reason. It's something for us to follow. It's a plan, and it gives us a guidepost to make sure we're doing the right things. Continue to reduce the town's debt. I'm going to continue to work very hard on that, and I'm hoping we have good news on that in this budget. We're going to hold the line on new costs, and no surprise here, always stay under the tax cap. We're going to try to again do that this year. Our priorities as far as capital is we want to build our community infrastructure by continuing the enhanced paving plan. I'm going to ask again for additional money out of our capital reserves to continue the enhanced paving plan and go further with that. We're going to continue our park improvements. And the big one is Legacy Park. We delivered a park to the veterans. It took us 5 years of working with people to finally get a donation to the town. I finally delivered them a home, and we will continue to work with them to get that park up and running. We'll continue to pursue our climate smart initiatives. I'm not going to get into it tonight because there's a lot of climate smart initiatives we've been getting into, but that is going to be a priority in the budget as well. Continue to build our walkways and our pedestrian paths, and I talked about continue those connections so people can continue to use the walkways to go to more places in the town. And my focus is Freeman's Bridge Road, and we're already starting to see a renaissance occur down there. I know we have some problems, there's no question about it, but I've been in constant discussion with some folks who have some very good plans for Freeman's Bridge Road, and we're very excited about some of the things you're going to be hearing about that soon. So that is going to be the focus of the coming years, is to take town center and replicate it on Freeman's. It's a little bit more of a challenge, but if you remember 12 years ago when I first became supervisor, you said, Gina, you remember this, this place was dark and empty. And we were able to put something together, working with Metroplex, working with developers. It really changed it, and that's going to happen on Freeman's Bridge Road as well. The challenges ahead, retirement payouts. We know that we went through this. We put out $1.1 million in 8 years just on payouts. So we're likely going to see $300,000, we believe, in new payouts over the next 2 years. So even though we have a reserve account, that reserve account is going to run dry as well at some point. So we have to really start looking at how we fund that. Health insurance continues to rise. We talked about that. And tax cap constraints. And this year in particular, in the face of rising inflation, I'm very concerned where we're going over the next year or two with inflation. And so that's going to be a bigger issue. What does this mean for us? This button is not very responsive. Well, first of all, the summary I would take away from this, I would suggest to you, is that we have budgeted wisely over the last 12 years. We're in very strong fiscal position. The decisions we made were the right decisions. They were prudent. We made investments with our cash instead of using debt. We cut the debt. We properly managed personnel costs. And I'd like to report that I believe we've seemed to weather the pandemic, at least financially at this juncture, because of our years of sensible budgeting has put us in a very strong position. Oh, two at once. We successfully advocated and won a better sales tax share agreement for the towns with the county. This was the first time in our history agreeing to share the county sales tax growth with the towns. That was huge, and that's going to be a benefit for us in the future. And the future of the town is very bright, but we have to remain vigilant regarding our financial position because things can change very quickly. It's easy to get giddy and say, see, you can do this, you can do that. We're going to be very prudent and judicious about how we move forward because our outlook can change very, very quickly. So that's the forum so far, but we like the forum to be a two-way street. So I don't know if there's anyone in the room. If there anyone's on the webinar, if you want to chime in, just raise your virtual hand and I will call upon you. I'm running two computers here, so I'm a little overwhelmed, but we'll get through it. So if anyone on the webinar has any questions, comments, please raise your hand and we'll chime you in. Anyone in the room have anything you want to talk about? Question at all? Okay, no one in the room. Anyone on the webinar? Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
So there was no hidden taxes there. We have recently got a letter that the sports program can start sending fees, although you said you may pay that as agreement. You talk a bit more about how you're forecasting the budget, what you're going to take in as income from your program.
Yes, so this budget doesn't have any additional new fees, doesn't deal with that at all. As I think everybody has by now heard us talk either at the budget forums for the past couple of years or the state of the towns over the past couple of years, that, as I said earlier, our funding for parks has changed. We don't get the subdivisions anymore. So I've had to go out and I found new revenue sources, which is the solar for parks thing. But while doing that, we looked at other towns and how they fund their parks and what they do for folks. And we really have made a past couple years, 2 or 3 years, we've talked about building a parks department, a dedicated parks department. Folks in highway, it's not fair to steal people from highway to come, do parks work when they got their own work to do. And so to build this program, we have to find revenue, right? We have to figure out how do we build a program out of scratch. It isn't something we inherited. So we started looking around and said, we need to do more for youth. I think we've identified that. First of all, we've had tremendous relationships with the sports leagues. It's been very beneficial by both. And, I read things on Facebook, and unfortunately, not everything is accurate that you see on Facebook. I know it might surprise some of you in the room. But we essentially are looking at working in partnership with how we can enhance the relationship, enhance the programs for youth sports, and how we can do that while fixing some of the pains that do exist. In every relationship, we have to acknowledge there are some pains, right? I mean, alienation of fields have come up a number of times, things like that. So what we wanted to do back in August of 2020 was sit down with all the leagues and start a conversation. We have no predisposed ideas. We have nowhere we're going. There's never been a time that we haven't worked with the leagues in partnership. There's never going to be a time where we just move forward and do something without getting everyone comfortable. So with that said, with the pandemic, we never really got around to having discussions the way we should have. People get together, and it kind of got sidelined with emergency type stuff instead. No pun intended with the sideline. But at some point, I really like this year or into 2022 to sit down and say what works for you and what works for us. That's what we have to do, right, to keep the relationship working well for everybody. And we want to look at new MOUs that are fairer to you and fairer to us. There's things that need to be tweaked. That's an old MOU. It's actually a very bad one. It's written on half a page. And it basically says, we do this, you do that, and that's it. And things have grown since then, so we're looking to continue the partnership, and we're looking to sit down and talk about your thoughts and ideas. Now, some folks have not wanted to do that, and that's unfortunate because that kind of prevents that dialogue of exchanging ideas from happening. But this budget, just to assure you, has no consideration of any different model than what we're already under. And we won't change that until we talk with everybody and get input from everybody and move forward together. Does that answer the question? Is there anything you wanted to say on that? Or I'm sorry, what when I was ready for it August of 2020, I tell you, but like I said, we couldn't get to it because of other things. If you want to sit down this month, we could sit down this month. We're ready. We've been ready, and we just need to find the time, and we can do that. And I'll talk with Vicki about arranging something. We want it to be consistent. This is one of the major, principles we're trying to achieve is consistent between the parks and the leagues. So, Burn Hills baseball does something different than 50 FC, than lacrosse, and so everybody has to be in the conversation. So it's going to take a little coordinating everybody. But we can do it as early as you want. I'll talk to Vicki tomorrow about starting that process.
Could I just ask what group are you guys affiliated with? Lacrosse. I just because I've personally had this similar concerns expressed to me from representatives from 50 FC, Burn Hills baseball, and Burn Hills softball about the letter that went out. So if we're going to start reaching out to clubs, it's great that you guys are here. But you may want to reach out to the other clubs as well, because the letter did, I think, cast some degree of doubt and or create concern about what the model was going to look like going forward. And certainly the need for conversation or having a conversation is always a positive thing. But to jump to fees for use for clubs, I think we're probably a long way off from that. I know certainly as a board member, I'd be a long way off from that.
Well, let me just correct a few things you said, Councilman. I already said we're going to engage everybody, so thank you for repeating that. But Nobody said anything about fees.
Yep.
Nobody said anything about imposing fees anywhere at any time, and anyone to suggest otherwise would be unfortunately misrepresenting the town's position. The letter did not say anything about that. The letter did say that if there were a cost-sharing model, then there would be consideration for any of the investments that were made into the park already. So that was really a way of indicating to the leagues that we're ready to be a partner with you. We're ready to understand you made investments. We're ready to understand that those should be taken into consideration wherever we go. But nobody has said anything about fees. I mean, we never had that conversation in our budget discussion. This board has never had that conversation. Yes, sir. Right, right. And then later in that letter, we talk about how that will be offset by your investments, but is a way to start. Right. Yep. Right. As a way of starting the conversation, that letter was sent as a precursor to what needed to be a conversation. It wasn't a edict that went out and said, now this is going to be the fees. We were trying to get people together to talk, which, you know, that letter, just to reference, went out in August of 2020. We haven't been able to get people together since then. So, you know, I guess what I want to say is this isn't part of this budget because it isn't in the budget. This is something that started in 2020. The conversation actually started when Jamie was here, 2015. It's been a long conversation. Nobody's done anything until everybody's comfortable. And there has been changes in the leagues, you know, 50 FC, or I should say Highland and Burn Hills merged into 50 FC. That changed things with them. So we're going to get everyone together. We're going to sit down. We're going to talk about it. But the model has to evolve with time, right? It's not 1993 anymore. It's not the same thing that it used to be. So we have to evolve that model. But it's going to be beneficial. Everything we've done to this point has been mutually beneficial. It's going to continue to be mutually beneficial. It's not a lose-win relationship. It's going to be mutually beneficial. The town has to do more for its youth programs. I think we'd all agree on that. And if we do agree on that, that's a great place to start the conversation. Yes, sir. Well, offhand, I don't have them all, but you have the football programs, you have the lacrosse programs, you have the soccer program, you have softball, you have baseball. You know, Vicky really would be the one that has all that information as to all the different leagues. I mean, who else can you think of off of that?
Folks with the airplanes over in Malik.
They're completely different.
The drones.
And to be fair to the town, the other thing we're trying to accomplish is, you know, we've had complaints from residents about alienation of parkland. That's a very real, I think, concern for the town and for our lawyer. Not just with the leagues, but, you know, now we're putting a whole new park together at the Veterans Park, and those folks are going to be using that park for exclusive type of things. And so what we want to do is have a consistent agreement with everybody, that everybody has the same understanding, everyone has the same rules, everyone has the same revenue shares, whatever it is. But we want to make sure everybody is getting the same, is treated the same way. And I think the Veterans Park is probably a good reason to start now before we add another park into it and have a problem with, you know, not having a clear, consistent understanding. Yes.
Can you discuss the federal stimulus impact on the budget?
Yeah, almost none really. At this juncture, we are looking at potentially, first of all, still trying to figure out what is eligible and what isn't eligible. And I think I talked to my counterparts around the state actually, and it's the same thing. It's not a lot of good guidance out there right now. There's a concern. I talked to Mayor Gifford that, you know, the village is kind of taking a pause on it because there's a provision that the state says, go ahead and spend it, but if we don't like it in the audit, we're clawing it back. And so people are a little bit worried about going forward right now. So this budget will not have any of that money considered because we still have to work out what's eligible and what's not.
How much is that?
So the town of Glenville, despite what everyone has, people have different numbers, 2.2 million will be the total over 2 years. We received our 1.1 million, and then next year we'll have another 1.1 million. But we have had to allocate, the state took the village's portion out of our money, so we have considerably less than people had heard originally. 2023, end of 2023. Yes. Anything else? Any other questions? No? Okay. So that's where we are right now. We have another budget forum at the senior center next Tuesday. The same presentation, but you're welcome to come, but it'll be the same presentation. And then Jason, as we go through the calendar, I will be submitting my budget end of September to the board. And then we have a whole bunch of public hearing type things, kind of state law sets in. And we're looking for a final adoption November. Yeah. Yeah, and that follows the state calendar of all the public hearings and all that have to occur. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I'll get Vicky together with everybody and let's start the conversation. I think it'll be good. Good for everybody. Okay. So now back to the agenda, and we'll go back to privilege of the floor. So I'm going to open privilege of the floor. We do have one person signed up, but if you're not signed up, you can still speak at privilege of the floor. We just ask you to come to the podium and address the board on any issue. And the first person signed up is Dave Hennel.
Good evening. So yes, my name is David Hennel. I am a lifelong resident of Glenville and one of the original people that were on the Glenville Oktoberfest Planning Committee. And just wanted to, again, officially take this opportunity to welcome everybody and invite you to come to the Glenville Oktoberfest that will be at the beautiful Malik Park, where I think we're going to be able to also, COVID allowing, we're going to be able to let the kids also enjoy the new playground that just opened. So that's fantastic. And again, we're looking forward to having a good, safe event. We're going to have more outdoor activities, a few fewer of the kids activities, just in being very cautious with COVID, but hopefully it'll be a great day. And again, it wouldn't be possible without all the volunteers. We have a volunteer committee that works year round. We also have a great volunteer committee that helps day of event and right up to the event. And again, just sort of commenting on some of the partner organizations, Schenectady County, the auxiliary police, the sheriffs, Buchendale Fire Department, Mohawk Ambulance, Glenville PD, obviously, Glenville Highway Department. And then also, the folks down at 50 FC, we were being very careful this week. We had to get the tents in early, but we tried to stay off the field so the kids could all enjoy soccer. So again, thanks to the town for being great partners with us. And again, look forward to a really great day.
Well, before you leave the podium there, I want to thank you for your many years of leadership. You've been through committee changes over the years. I know now you're down to a smaller committee because of COVID and you're doing a lot more, you and Vicky and some others, but this has been an absolutely fabulous community event for everybody, and your work and early on Sid and the GPBA and Gina early on, this is one of my major things that I campaigned on as a town board member in 2007, and it wasn't until you guys all came together that we were able to get that done. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate all your work, even if I have to put up with the New England Patriots hat every once in a while.
Even worse, the Red Sox.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Dave, are you guys still looking for volunteers for the event?
Yeah, we're definitely looking for volunteers. We actually do have a sign up genius. So basically groups can, if you have groups that want to do volunteer, we definitely have some volunteer openings. Again, I think with COVID, some people are a little bit nervous about that, but yeah, absolutely. Facebook, I think we're adding the link on Facebook. So link Facebook or the Glenville Oktoberfest website. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak at privilege of the floor? on any matter? Going once, going twice, seeing none. Privilege floor is now closed. We'll move to supervisors' comments to the board, and they will be brief because most of my comments were budget related, but I do want to update some folks on some things. Some of it was already talked about. Dave, you're a tall man. There we go. First of all, I want to thank Ariana Stark for the great work. I was able to attend the dedication of her boot brush station at Sanders Preserve, and she did a wonderful job putting this in for our residents and to protect the Sanders Preserve from invasive species. So now it's really recommended that before you go into a preserve like that, that you clean your boots so you don't bring anything into the preserve that doesn't belong in there, which has been happening a lot. And this was her gold award for her Girl Scouts Gold Award project, and it was wonderful. And I've heard people have already used it, and it's just great. So make sure you use it, clean your feet before you go into the preserve. We're going to look at doing it in other places as well. It really cuts down on invasive species. I might have mentioned Mayor Gifford. The mayor and I met also with Trustee Gray to work out some agreements that the town and the village had some different perspectives on, one of them being the second August sidewalk. And we're able to work out an agreement that the village will be paying for their portion of the sidewalk. We also worked out in parks a dog park agreement in principle that we will be helping our residents below the avenue access the dog park for the Scotia Dog Park by having a lump sum payment from the town, and that will be on the work session that we have in October. And also we did talk about youth programming with the Village of Scotia on how we can come together and do more youth programming. And we have some, I think, exciting ideas we can talk about on that as well. I was able to meet with the folks at Rad Soap. Everyone's excited about Rad Soap opening on Freemansbridge Road. That was one of the major good news points of Freemansbridge Road is that we start that renaissance. That building is coming together beautiful. It looks great. It's going to look great when it's done. But what I heard from our residents is Rad Soap is just a manufacturing facility there, and everybody wants to buy this soap. I didn't even know anything about the soap, but you have to go out to Stuyvesant Plaza to buy the soap. So I got together some of our small business owners, and I got together Rad Soap, and we all came into the conference room and we sat down and they passed around soap and everyone was smelling the soap. And the good news is there's going to be some distribution points here in the town of Glenville of Rad Soap. Some of our small businesses will be selling that soap, and I was able to help facilitate bringing those two together to make that happen, and we're very excited about it. I was able to attend the senior picnic last week, and what was great about that was not so much the hot dog and the ice cream, or that the fact that they beat me at cornhole, but she was a ringer. I played Barb Brown, and Barb Brown acted like she wasn't any good at this, and I was killing her at the beginning. Then all of a sudden she came on, and after she beat me, she said, "You didn't know I was the pitcher in the Army, did you?" No, I didn't. But it was great to see everybody back, and they were so excited to be back and to be talking to each other again. That socialization was so important to them, and it was a great event. Lastly, I was able to attend an event over at the Guanho Hawk, Play for Kids. That's a great program for raising money for Ronald McDonald House. I was honored to be part of that. I was at the 9/11 ceremony, obviously, as the master of ceremonies, the Veterans Park ceremony, the same. And that very same day, I had to go scoop ice cream in St. Stephen's at Berkeley Square for a movie night. But it was so great to see that neighborhood. There was like 100 people that came out of their houses to watch a movie. And it was just like, you know, it's what the community is, what it's all about. And that was great. I won't say anything more on Oktoberfest. I think we already talked about it other than come. It's going to be great. We did have a small ribbon cutting at the playground for the Melwick, the new inclusive playground. I've been talking with Kathy Gatta about doing a county check presentation, and we kind of thought a good idea was to pick a time, and I'm waiting to hear back from Kathy on this. She's talking to the other legislators to pick a time on Oktoberfest to do a check ceremony. So please let me know your availability. So when I talk to Kathy, we can find a time that's best for the board and the legislators to do the check ceremony. We figure it'd be a lot of people there, be something noticeable going on. Not that everyone's going to gather, but there'll be something going on that people can watch. So the rest, I've already did the budget form, so no financials tonight, and that's all I have. Okay, we move on to resolution number 8, appointing Scott Francisco to the position of laborer. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved in second. Any discussion?
Mr. Supervisor, there's a vacant laborer position within the Glenville Highway Department. The advertisement for the position resulted in several applicants. Interviews were conducted, and the highway superintendent recommends that Scott Francisco be appointed to the open laborer position. This resolution, should it pass, would provisionally appoint Scott Francisco of 516 Elliott Street in Glenville to the position of laborer effective September 7th, 2021, at a starting rate of $16.02 per hour and benefits as determined by the bargaining agreement between the town and CSEA Highway.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin,
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa,
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski,
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski,
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley.
Yes, resolution passes. Next, resolution 9, authorizing the supervisor to execute necessary documentations for a Justice Department assistance program. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. Supervisor, this is another annual application that is submitted by our town court clerks for funding for municipal court security projects. This 2021 to 2022 grant cycle application is for up to $30,000. I know that we have been successful in the past in obtaining funding through this grant program. The chairs that everyone is sitting in, some of the other improvements within the room here, as this room is a dual use room. And I would just like to thank the court clerks. This is probably not a super fun application, but they seem to do very well because they manage to get us money almost every single year.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin,
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa,
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski,
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski,
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley.
Yes, resolution passes. Next, resolution 10, adopting the Water District 11 Extension 51 located at 177 Foch Road. Do I have a motion?
I'll move
Do I
it.
have a second?
I'll second.
Moved in second. Any discussion?
Mr. Supervisor, as stated, this resolution, should it pass, would adopt the extension number 51 for Water District 11 on 177 Foch Road. I don't know if I said that right. I always like to point out when we have these types of things that the fees and costs for such extension will be borne by the property owner, not by the town.
Thank you. And Foch is correct. I asked Tammy Stocker, and I know never to question Tammy Stocker when it
No.
comes to any road
No.
questions in the town of Glenville.
Nope.
So. Any other questions or comments? Is this a new home? Yes. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin.
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa.
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski.
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski,
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley.
Yes, resolution passes. Next, resolution 11, approving the minutes of the town board meeting on September 1st, 2021. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved in second. Any discussion?
As stated, Mr. Supervisor, this resolution approves the minutes from the September 1st board meeting. I thank Ms. Davenport for putting those together for us.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin.
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa.
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski.
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski.
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley.
Yes, resolution passes. Next, resolution 12, approving the monthly departmental reports for August 2021. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved in second. Any discussion?
As noted, Mr. Supervisor, this resolution would approve the departmental reports for various departments as submitted by the department heads to our various email accounts.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin.
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa.
Yes.
Councilman Godlewski.
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski.
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley.
Yes, resolution passes. Next resolution is an add-on 1, reappointing Francis Murphy to the Board of Assessment Review. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Just to start the conversation, as you all know, Francis Murphy has been a member of our bar for a long time. He is required to be reappointed by October 1st of 2021. And then his term would expire on September 30th of 2026. He comes to us, the reappointment, highly recommended by our assessor, Bill Portel, who enjoys his relationship and his working relationship with Francis. Any questions or comments?
The Board of Assessment Review is generally a pretty thankless job,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
they're not lining up out the door
Yeah.
for that, so. But Fran's been a great asset to the team. I know Bill's mentioned that to me before.
Any other questions or comments? I just want to say on this one, Francis is also a West Glenville resident. We work very hard to try to get representation geographically. I reached out to a Scotia resident who we will hopefully be appointing at the end of the year and in the reorg, who's interested. And then we have 2 East Glenville. So we have that geographic
Yeah,
diversity.
I think that's important.
Especially on that board.
Yep, I would agree.
Mhm.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Goodwinski?
Yes.
Councilman Wozzachowski?
Yes,
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Next resolution, add-on 2, authorizing the town board to seek lead agency status to review the Freeman's Bridge Road multi-use path. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
second,
Moved and second. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, I just want to note on my page here, it says authorization to sign a contract with Creek Engineers. I think that needs to be corrected on the resolution page itself at the top, the title.
That I don't know.
Would-
Went directly to me.
Yeah, Melissa, you're on the line. Did you hear Jim's question? You're self-muted, Melissa. There you go, Melissa.
Yep, I can fix that if it's not too late for
Make sure for,
passing it. Yeah,
but otherwise, this is just we're claiming lead agent status in the review for the environmental assessment form. For the coordinated review.
right.
Our attorney had said that is a technical correction and she'll amend it before.
Okay, yep. All right, that's it.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Goodwinski?
Yes.
Councilman Wozzachowski?
yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Now, poor Travis, you waited all this whole meeting for this,
Save the best for last.
but you
right,
liked the
Trav?
budget for him. You liked it, didn't you? Because you're gonna go down and tell the guys down there. They got to come to the next one.
He's going to tell them that we have plenty of money.
We have an add-on resolution, number 3, appointing Travis St. Louis to the position of senior automotive mechanic. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
I have a second.
I'll second.
Moved and second. Any discussion?
Mr. Supervisor, this resolution is in regards to a vacant senior automotive mechanic position within the Glenville Highway Department. Travis St. Louis has been employed by the town of Glenville since February of 2019, and you have been performing the duties of senior automotive mechanic position on an out-of-title basis since the vacancy occurred, which I believe was due to a retirement. Correct? Or something. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The highway superintendent recommends that Travis St. Louis be appointed to the position of senior automotive mechanic. So this resolution, should it pass, would provisionally appoint Travis St. Louis of 148 Horseman Road in Glenville to the position of senior automotive mechanic effective September 20th, 2021 for the rate of such title for $30.04 per hour and benefits as determined by the bargaining agreement between the town and CSEA Highway. I'd just like to say, I remember when we voted on you and approved you as an employee for the town, and I've not heard anything but glowing reports from Tom and Mike since you've been here. So congratulations. You're welcome.
Okay, so any other questions or comments?
Congratulations. That's great.
Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
Councilman Aragosa?
Yes.
Councilman Goodwinski?
Congratulations, yes.
Councilman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, congratulations, Travis. I'm very happy for you. I know you've been waiting for this and you certainly deserve it. We appreciate everything you and the rest of the staff does. So congratulations. And all we have, we're at the end now with new business. I'll start on my left with Councilman Galuski.
Just try to make time to go to Oktoberfest. It's going to be a great event. And that's all, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Wozzachowski.
I have nothing.
Councilman Martin.
Nothing?
Councilman Aragosa. I have nothing either, so I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I will move that.
Do I have a second? Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.